All right, here. Tonight we're going to go over the first three kings of Israel, right? So can you give us a little background on what we're dealing with here tonight?
Yeah, so the first three kings of Israel are Saul, David, and Solomon. So they were each king for 40 years. So 1100 BC, approximately, Saul became the first king of Israel. Before him, Samuel and other judges judged Israel. But he was the first king that was anointed by, well, he was anointed by Samuel to be the first king. He started good, did a decent job, but then after a while, he only started half listening to God. Then he started spiraling downward until he died in battle. And he ended up being an enemy of God. He just didn't want to be the reprimand that he got from God. He just kept just worse and worse fighting against God, and it turned out really sad. Then we have David. David replaced Saul. Initially, he was anointed by Samuel just as a teenager. Then he had the event with Goliath as a teenager, likely also. Then he fought for Saul because he was a man that had no fear. He trusted God, and Saul was pleased with him, and so on. But then, after wasn't long before Saul got jealous because David was just too successful to be his servant. So then finally he fought for Saul, but then he fled from Saul for many years. And then age 30, he was finally anointed as king when Saul died in battle. And what's really nice about David, I often think about Psalm 23. Doesn't matter what age you think about him, that was his testimony. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, and all the nice thoughts that are there. When he was a teenager, that was who he was. And when he was a young man, old man, didn't matter. He always the Lord. That was everything in his life. Then he had the Bathsheba event in his life. And that was a real sad story. He got, yeah, he lost his, he was just made a foolish move, and then he tried to work his way out of it, had her husband killed and all that. But anyways, God brought him to the brought him to notice, and but I really love that God didn't play gotcha. He gave him the opportunity, reprimanded him, and David says yes. He says, I've really sinned against God and against man. I have made a mess of things. And God says there's consequences, and David says bring it on, because that's part of the deal. And like even in the 23rd Psalm, it says that your Lord, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And the rod was what he got. He got
Hmm.
punished. He got the
You got
so
disciplined.
yeah, that's right. And he was okay with that, but he kept loving God, and he couldn't live without him. And then he made preparations for the temple in his old age because he couldn't build it because he was a man of blood. That was going to be his son's project. And eventually and in that, all this, his promise was that one of his descendants would be the Messiah. So wow, but he kept being close to God. Solomon, his son, was next. He was maybe he reigned. He got to be king maybe 18. We're not sure. He was a young man because he was one of the younger children of David, and but he was a really good guy. He started very humble, and he asked for wisdom to rule that great country, and God gave him the wisdom, and he promised him wealth and power and long life if he got everything else right too. He built a beautiful temple to replace the tabernacle as per instructions from his father, that David had made preparation. Then he built a house for himself, was 4 times bigger than the temple. Then he started marrying a lot of foreign women. That was all bad. Then he started importing horses, and that wasn't good because horses were not they never had horses in Israel's army because God wanted foot soldiers. He didn't want to have them be an extra strong, he didn't want them to be strong on their own. But that's what you get with horses and chariots and so on. That wasn't part of God's plan. He got proud. And then we have First Kings 11, 1 to 11. You want to read that for us?
Yeah, for sure. It's talking about Solomon and his wives here. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughters, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. They were from the nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his hearts after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely, as David his father had done. On a hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. He did the same for all his foreign wives who had burned incense and offered sacrifices to their gods. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. So the Lord said to Solomon, since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, I will not do it in your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, no, and that's and actually those altars that he built around on east of Jerusalem, they were stood there for 360 years till Josiah destroyed them, and a later king, a descendant of Solomon. And it's so sad because all that opportunity that he had, and he wasted it on his own selfish pleasures. And his son Rehoboam only got the tribe of Judah, and all the other tribes went to Jeroboam. So, like, there's three kings here. Saul tanked. David, a wonderful journey. Solomon started wonderfully and didn't end well. All this opportunity, sometime, and privilege, and what we end up with is not to be on the right side of God, and that's really sad.
And that's the truth, right? So I like the verse to sum it up is like, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. It's a whole process. It's a daily battle that we need to surrender our lives to the Lord.
For sure.
All right. Thanks a lot for this, Harry.
Thank you.